My son, who was a junior in high school at the time, was visiting his buddy on the outskirts of town. They own a farm in a quasi-rural part of Utah. It was about 9:30 to 10 p.m. Something was making noise outside, and the dad was afraid a skunk or something was messing with his chickens. He grabs a flashlight and a shotgun and heads out. After the dad exited the house, my son and his buddy decided to follow him. A barn was about 200 feet away, and the dad was beelining through a field towards it. Son and his friend were trailing about 100 feet behind. The dad enters the cabin. Son and friend are trudging through the field to get closer. Next thing my son hears is a scream escape the barn in the shotgun blast. The dad comes barreling out of the barn, sees my son and his kid, and just screams for them to run back to the house. They all get inside the house, and the dad is shaken up. He calls 911 and explains that he needs the cops to check the barn. The dad sat shaking at the dinner table, and my son and his friend sat down and asked what happened. The dad said that when he got inside the barn, something was just off, and then a smell hit him, but he kept moving toward the back. The barn had rafters and holding pens for animals on either side. Well, he is scanning with the flashlight, and then he shined the light towards the back, and he saw it. This lengthy, white man or creature had its back to him. Its skin was ash white, and he knew it was off because he said a long white arm was reaching up and hanging over one of the rafters. It was leaning forward and the head was hanging down, but it is when it cocked its head and twisted like an owl to face him straight on, looking at him from below the armpit on an elongated neck that he freaked out and fired. During the story, he was checking the windows as they waited for the cops. The cops did not show. My son said the unmarked black vans appeared. A helicopter crested the ridge and landed in the field. Military-geared men exited the vans. Another van had men in hazmat suits escorted by the military-geared men towards the barn. The thing, creature, man had escaped out of the back. There was literal white goo that was on parts of the barn where the shot caused spatter. The helicopter and vans were on premise for about an hour, scouring the area. No police arrived the entire time. After they left, my son and his friend gathered some courage and went to the barn, and that's when they saw the white goo. My son was going to stay the night, but the entire thing freaked him out, and he did not like the idea of being in the countryside with that thing running around. My son said that the rafters to the barn were like 12 feet high, and the way the dad described it, it was hunched over, and an arm dangled down over the rafter above, so it was no small thing. Now, if it was blasted by a gun, you'd think the cops would look into it. Nothing. The dad was questioned, but that was it. No repercussions for shooting someone, regardless it being Utah and such. Questions or a form or something like that would be filled out, I'd think, but what do I know? The hazmat suit guys had collected something. My son thinks it was the white goo. Whatever it was, the powers that be had to have had this thing on their radar to have this type of response in less than 30 minutes where this place was. My 2 cents. A DNA D.U.M.B experiment escaped, always purposefully let loose in the wild and monitored to see what it does, but again, what do I know? Be me. I am a transient person, which basically means that I roam around and don't stay in one place for too long. I do not have a permanent home. I head to Asheville with my now dead friend, Sheen, via freight train. We are hanging out in front of a closed downtown store between bars on Lexington Street in downtown Asheville. I start busking. We get a little drink and whatnot. This dude walks up with a hat and sunglasses. It's like 2 a.m. at this time. Dude pulls out an e-cig and gives my homie a golden dollar. We start talking about things. Conversation topic becomes conspiracy, like MKUltra. Sheen mentions Dracos. Dude looks up at me. At that exact second, there is a loud screech. I cannot describe what it sounded like. Sheen turns to me and asks me what the hell that was. The strange dude laughs and says, "We are timeless," and then disappear. Like, I looked away from him and at Sheen and looked back and he was gone. The bars are closed down now. The streets are cleared out, so we decided to go and find a spot to camp for the night. We find a bush behind a parking lot of a hotel. It's hard to describe, but it was a pine tree that had an open spectrum instead of it with a chain link fence and then the parking lot. We roll out in the bush. Hear that screech again. The strange dude from earlier appears in this bush. What the hell? I pull out my knife. Sheen grabbed his smiley, padlock on a chain. We nod at each other, ready to attack this dude because we both thought that he was some creep that was gonna try and kill us. Dude says, "Put them away. I don't want to hurt you, nor do I intend to. However, you really should not be here right now." He points up into the sky. I see a bright twinkle of light, and then what looked like a shooting star. Dude says, "Stay down. Don't make any sudden movement." We lay there, and then hear a loud thump, and then another, and then another. It sounds like something big is walking around. The sound gets louder. I start hearing the snarling, like that of a pig. It gets louder. The strange man starts shining what looks like a laser toward the parking lot, through the chain link fence. He is blinking the laser like he is using Morse code. The thumps and snarling get a lot louder. I see a giant silhouette in the shape of a humanoid thing, probably 10 feet tall at least, that is in the parking lot. That thing gets closer and louder. The strange dude keeps pointing the laser-looking thing at it. I look back at the strange man, and his skin starts changing. It's hard to explain. Like, scales become visible on his skin, and it got darker. His eyes started turning black. He looks like, a lizard. The thing gets right up to the fence. We are both too freaked out to look over, so we just stay there, laying flat on the ground. Next, we hear a loud screech, just like we did earlier, and that's when I did look. This thing, whatever it was right next to us. It had greenish, blackish scale skin, a small head and long legs. Barely could make out its profile due to the only light being a small street lamp on the other side of the parking lot. It's why we chose to sleep at this spot, so we could not be spotted easily. The strange dude also has changed shape. I did not even recognize his face in the shadows. I close my eyes for a second and hear a loud scream, like that of a little girl. I open my eyes back up. Silence. That thing is gone, and the strange dude looks back to normal. The strange dude looks at me and says, "You are lucky, really lucky. Without me, both of you would have been food." The strange man looks at Sheen and says, "I will see you soon." The strange man gets up and leaves. Sheen and me are so freaked out. We packed up and went to the hop out at the River Arts District to sleep. We talked about what the hell we saw. Little did we know that was the last time I would see Sheen. I got on an eastbound to Enola, PA, and Sheen wanted to go west to New Orleans. 3 months later, Sheen dies in an abandoned building in NOLA under bizarre circumstances. They just assumed he was on some random designer drug that could not be tested. I have dreams and nightmares about this to this very day, and the only person that witnessed this besides me is dead. Nobody believes me. The British Army had a base in Germany a stone's throw away from Belsen. Lots of stories were going around of spooky stuff from there. I spent 5 years there. I can post all day if anyone is interested. We had artillery, engineers, and medics in the barracks, plus smaller support units, houses for the merry guys and families, schools, you name it. Stories were legion and covered numerous locations. Heard a few things when I was there about old stuff, but most of what I can tell happened when I was there. There was also another large British barracks about 30 kilometers away, which had its own share of stories. There was an officer's mess at the rear of the barracks, outside the perimeter. One night, the guard said someone approached the gate, then ran off. They called the MPs who drove around, looking for the person. They spotted them and called after them, whereupon they ran off. The MPs gave chase, but backed off when they realized they were going at 30 miles per hour and still not gaining on the person running off. Talking of the MPs, none of them would go upstairs in their building at night after one of them got shoved out of a doorway by some sort of invisible entity one evening. Opposite the MP's building, you had the main medical center. This was haunted by a little boy, who was referred to as Jack. No one knew what his origin was, and those who saw him were completely unaware of what they had seen until the full circumstances of the sighting were analyzed. For example, the medical center was closed at weekends and secured, with a couple of paramedics inside on standby. One Saturday, one guy was tidying up and saw Jack standing in the doorway of a waiting room. He figured it was a boy who was there because one of his parents had come in for help and was being treated by the other paramedic. Having finished what he was doing, he went to make a cup of coffee and found the other medic watching TV, which they had been doing all afternoon. Another time, when the place was fully manned, Jack was seen running along the corridor of the upper floor by one of the officers who wanted to know why a child had run past his office door in what was an off-limits area. From personal experience, I was in the medical center one afternoon when a woman soldier standing nearby completely freaked out. She said that something or someone had pulled on the bottom of her jacket. I kept my mouth shut. One time, I was going back to my accommodation late at night and noticed that in one block, all the lights were on the top floor. I mentioned it to someone the next day and was told that the top floor of the block was female accommodation and that many of them slept with the lights on as they were scared stiff of whatever. In one of the unit bars, I think it was the medics, they'd seen some sort of glowing light ball/orb moving around the room. Meanwhile, in another bar, people kept seeing movement out of the corner of their eye when seated at the bar itself. Most of the time, it was someone entering the room, but on quite a few occasions, people would look around and nothing was there. Married guys were mostly accommodated in converted barracks blocks at one end of the camp. One guy, a friend of mine, lived in one of them and had a small son. One evening, having put his son to bed a while back, the boy could be heard chattering away. My friend went to his son's room and asked him what he was doing out so late. The boy pointed to the far side of the room and told his father that he had been talking to the soldier. There was also housing outside the perimeter, occupied by officers. One was occupied by a couple who were both serving, and their house had glass panels in some of the doors, so you could see people on the other side of the door. One afternoon, both were working around the house. The wife called out to what she thought was her husband in another room, whose outline she could see through the glass, only to get a reply from behind her. She turned around, saw her husband, and then looked back, and whatever it was had gone. One night, the MPs received a call regarding a prowler from one of the married guys. It seemed like someone was running around outside his ground floor flat, banging on the windows one after another, although no one could be seen outside. The MPs turned out, had a look around, found nothing, then went inside to get a few details from the guy that had called the incident in. The soldier, his family, and the two MPs all went and sat in the kitchen. With everyone in the same room, someone/something was seen to walk past the kitchen door. Now for the scary one. I lived in more than one block while I was there and, at one point, moved into one of the old barracks blocks. It was late summer and still quite warm, so at night I left the window open and pushed the quilt down to my thigh so that if I woke up in the middle of the night and it was cold, I could reach down and pull the quilt up over me. This went on for a few days. Then one night, having been in bed literally a couple of minutes, the quilt came right back up to the bed and completely covered me. Cue spooky shiver running down my spine when watching scary movies, ramped up to epic proportions. I held my ground, nothing more happened, and I went to sleep. At work on Monday, I mentioned this to everyone. Most people had heard strange stories, but no one could figure out why, in an old SS barracks, close to the site of a concentration camp, my experience had involved a goose feather duvet. Then one of the women said that, in fact, it made perfect sense. She explained that after the liberation of Belsen, there were a lot of people in a bad way, and, apparently, some of the barrack blocks were used as hospital blocks. Now, imagine that you are a nurse in a ward, working nights, and one of the sleeping patients has thrown his sheets off. There was another barracks complex not too far away that housed a couple of tank regiments, an infantry battalion, and all of the usual support elements. The overall layout was similar to the place that I lived in. I can't remember much about the things that I heard regarding it, but the one that sticks in my mind was not actually to do with the barracks, but about London. The guy I heard it from was a civilian interpreter, a steady, well-educated, middle-aged guy. He told me how he had once been walking in one of the main parks in London, sadly, I can't remember which one, with his wife. He turned to speak to her, and she had just vanished. He then began to look around, and noticed that everyone was wearing old-fashioned clothing. Just as he was wondering what the hell was happening, he looked back to where his wife had been. She was now there again, and everything was back to normal. From his wife's perspective, one moment he was there, then he wasn't, and then he was back again. Hey, hope you've enjoyed the story so far. If you want to hear more, make sure to subscribe, like the video, and leave a comment because it lets YouTube know you like the content and helps more people to see these videos. My next big goal for the channel is 100,000 subscribers, and as a celebration, I will be doing a Q&A video once we hit that goal. Thank you, and back to the stories. I live in Brazil. My family has a cabin deep in the countryside woods right by an enormous lake. The biggest family tradition is, of course, fishing. This happened to my dad in his younger years. He is fishing at night at said lake. He caught some fine-sized fish. He feels good and prepares to head out. He starts the motor on the boat. It's already way past midnight. The only light source beyond his flashlight is the full moon. He hears some rustling in the tall grass by his left. He approaches the coast to get a good look at what it is. There is nothing. Whatever it is hiding. Suddenly, he sees it crouching and immediately turns his flashlight off. It's an enormous and gray wolf, head to toe in dark gray fur, yellow eyes shining and staring directly at him, none of them moving an inch. There is complete silence as he is baffled, looking at this majestic beast. Finally, he starts going home. The wolf follows him the entire time until he gets to the other side of the coast and gets home. My dad said it was gigantic, and in later years was convinced that it was either a spirit or a werewolf. The curious thing, this kind of wolf is not natural to the country. It does not and cannot live here, and has never been seen around here. So much haunted stuff has happened in this cabin and area that it has become my favorite place in the world. I miss going there. I have a ton of stories if any anon is interested. Sure, here is one that is so surreal that I refused to believe it until years later when I got older and saw my share of stuff. This happened in the 1970s. My dad and his older brothers are fishing at the same lake by the cabin in the woods. They are late night fishing. It's probably around 2 a.m. They get some fish, but nothing really exciting. They tried different lures, but they can't get anything else. Eventually, the fishing dies down. No bites whatsoever. They all get tired and start planning to head home. Finally, they realize they can hear this very low humming noise. Everything is completely silent besides the low humming noise. Dad said to me it was like the air was vibrating. Then my uncle Jose points his finger upwards and starts losing his shit. Dad and his older brother Roberto looks up, and they see it too. Dad said to me that it looked like a star descending directly to them. It gets closer, and finally, it is hovering right above them. Dad said it looked exactly like a flying saucer. It's completely black, round, and with some dim lights running around it. The humming sound gets way louder, and Dad said he could feel his entire body vibrate. Uncle Roberto has a panic attack and starts throwing stuff around, and then passes out. This thing hovers above them for around 10 seconds more, and then shoots up the sky in a split second, and the shockwave almost capsized their boat. The humming sound stops, and they head home, covered in piss. I never believed the story. He told it to me only twice, and I was skeptical as hell. I only started believing in the story when I asked my Uncle Jose about it, and he said, "You should ask your Uncle Roberto about it." And when I did, he got pale as milk and immediately changed the subject. Then, later in private, he warned me never to mention it again in his presence. A few weeks ago, I moved up near the Canadian border of Maine with my GF and her mother, out in the sticks. They own and live on about a mile of largely undeveloped land, mostly used for logging, but oddly, very spare work had been done before it was sold to them for a song. We live in a couple of small one-room cabins, and it's much rougher than the average standard of modern living. I will just say that I shit in the woods now, and a mosquito bit me on the nutsack the other day, if that gives you an idea. The closest town is around 30 minutes away, and I have not had the opportunity to pick the brains of the locals on legends and folklore just yet. Thinking today or tomorrow, I will go find where people drink in this town and start spreading a few beers and report back any hits. For now, this thread will serve for some feedback and a place for other anon's input. Already have a couple of stories personally though, so I will start. The first isn't very exciting, but a little spooky. The second happened just last night and was fairly pants-shitting. Be me. My GF is at work. My GF's mom, I call her Mama, asked me to come with her to replace the trail cameras. There are lots of poachers and some gang activity, so they are absolutely necessary. Also, mischievous hillbilly neighbors. We set off through the woods. I'm listening closely to Mama cause she knows this place well and I don't yet. Also, she intends to leave this year and wants me to know the woods inside and out to take care of GF. I digress. Mama asks if I want to see the ghost hole. My ears perk up. Hell yeah, spooky stuff, and I have a shotgun. Based. Oh crap, I live here now, and there is a place called Ghost Hole on it. Mama is a pragmatic and tough woman, not a person prone to calling a place something with a paranormal connotation. Suddenly not as based. We take a fork in the trail that leads to a path of all fern and grass, leading to a clearing with a small swamp. Mama tells me that some of the more schizo neighbors have asked permission to perform rituals and seances here. She won't let anyone come here. She says that nothing good can come from yokels stirring it up. You're a good man, Anon. You will be fine to take a look. I won't go further than this though. To me, it feels the ground is hollow, as if it could fall away. Nothing grows here but some ferns and this shitty bear grass. That tree in the middle is barely hanging on, and I feel it's only spite. I've taken pictures here on my good camera, and it's always full of floaters and artifacts. It does not pick up on phones so well, I think. Notice the animal tracks go around it. She walks the perimeter a bit as I cross the threshold, pointing them out. If they don't like, I don't. My skin prickles, and I get a cold, greasy feeling despite the mild weather. The normally vicious flies and mosquitoes quell their assault. The birds are even staying away from it. Sure enough, there is not even a moose print or a pile of dung inside of it. Come on and on. I don't like it here. We are wasting daylight. I leave the clearing and the bugs immediately go in for the kill. The greasy feeling subsides. We check up on the trail cams and then go home. Tell my GF all about it. She is a very physically strong and not an easily cowed woman like her mom. She just tells me to be careful there and not to mess with it too much. And that's all I know about it so far. Did not feel too bad yesterday on it, but still did not feel like I should linger. If any Anons have any suggestions that don't involve pissing off any juju there, I am all ears. Second story in my next post. Last night, after poking around the ghost hole, I am feeding the pet rats their snacks. They love bananas. Look outside the window. There is this stupid ass raccoon that's been stealing chicken eggs and messing up the trash. It makes eye contact with me, and then it bolts. I have been trying to bag him for weeks. I even fed him half of a rich chocolate cake in hopes it would kill him. Nope, it just made him fatter. I grab my shotgun, a glass of wine for me, and some tuna for bait. I load the cannon. I lay the bait. I go sit on my car a ways away. My GF is not going to be home from work for an hour. She would be so hot to see his carcass. Anon goes on stakeout. 30 minutes in, I am watching the moon and clouds. I am listening to the windshield and June bugs. I feel something eerie. It's probably just my mind wandering over old films and books. I remember that Brothers Grimm flick, the one with the mud boy. You know the one. It's the worst thing to think of, basically. It's all good and on, chill. Another 30 minutes go by. I hear my GF's truck coming up the road. Nobody else it could be. I hear her messing hard with the property gate, louder than usual. She slams it closed. She pulls in, brights on. She does not blink at seeing me illuminated by the truck, holding the gun. As I said, she's just that way. Hey Jeff, I saw that Anon, we need to go inside, now. Okay. She tells me near the neighbor's place, she saw a weird looking deer running in slow motion, as if through water, across the road, looking straight at her in the brights, except it had an extra joint in the front legs. It had no ears, no tail. The torso was way too long, like it had extra ribs. My GF is not one for tall tales, or to get shook up. We go inside, lock up. I piss off the porch, with the shoddy the rest of the night. She's also told me in the warmer months, the woods here are very friendly, but not to mess with it in the winter. They are foreboding, and don't want you there, and sometimes you can hear laughter from the swamps, at night, in -20 weather, where no person should be. That's all I got so far, Nons. Anyone else? This is not really that spooky, I guess, but it's from last night. Be me, Anon with GF. She stays at my place. It's an apartment with 3 rooms next to each other. A short hallway that leads to an open living room with kitchen plus bathroom on the other side. We lay on the bed just fooling around, wrestling for a space. We suddenly hear footsteps inside of the room. What the hell? My GF hears it too. We decide to jet into the middle room, my sleeping room. Side note, this is not the first time it happened, but not literally close to us. We lay on my bed trying to sleep. We are still hearing footsteps around the house, not in my room. Suddenly overwhelmed by a feeling of sheer dread, almost panic for me and my GF. She says we need to burn some dried up sage and light a candle. We are calmed a bit, but noises are still heard, and it's been going on for 3 days, and previously too sometimes. Am I getting bamboozled by some poltergeist? Is it someone from my family visiting me? My mom died 9 years ago, plus grandmother and uncle in the span of the last 3 years. I had a prophetic dream about my uncle dying too. While at it, let me post the whole experience about my uncle. Have an annual mass every anniversary of mom's death. He is always present. It was his sister, after all. He is not present during the most recent one. He is known to have problems with alcohol. I think he just got drunk and missed it. I try to call him. His phone is on mute. Either that, or he left for some extra job to one of his friends so he can have more money for alcohol. I forget about him and go about my own business. Fast forward like a week, I am going to bed. I'm having this weird dream where I am at my uncle's place. I see him sleeping on the bed while the TV plays in the background. No, not sleeping. He is fucking dead. I wake up in the morning, forgetting the dream. A day or 2 passes by. I am at work. My sister calls me. Anon, Uncle is dead. It turned out his drinking buddies were also worried that he was not appearing at the bar. One of the dudes decided to take a trip to his place. He found him dead, sitting in a chair. The corpse was rotten. He must have been there for over a week, add high humidity and temperature at his place. Not a pleasant view. The cops and mortuary workers told us that. Am I a medium, or did my uncle reach out to me in his last moments? I used to work at a Joanne Fabrics. Guy here, what are you gonna do? A job is a job. The place used to be situated in an older type building, and everyone said it was haunted. For instance, there were several stairs leading to the upper level where management was. The stairs had beepers, so every time someone went up there, a bell would ring. Heard stories like somebody working late at night would be all alone and would hear 2 beepers go off at the same time, one for each set of staircases at opposite sides of the store. Weird thing was, after working there for a couple of months, the store relocated to a larger building in the next town over, and I swear, the ghost followed us to the new location. I remember seeing displays and signs getting knocked over when no one was around, and not just falling over, it looked and sounded like someone pushed them with force. The creepiest stuff though was one of the last few weeks I worked there. There were several of us working an overnight shift stocking product. Near the end of the shift, maybe around 5 in the morning, we heard a baby crying in the store. It sounded like it was coming from the ceiling. All of the doors were locked since it was not opening time. There was no way there could be anyone in the store with a baby, and definitely no employees would bring a baby. Wouldn't that be weird? I can still hear that baby crying. So goddamn weird.